Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I think we're both in need of a deep breath in and
Yes.
releasing. Today's a big day. I have Haleigh Howland with me today, and I'm so grateful that you made time in your schedule to meet with me because you have big things happening in your life, and we'll get to that in just a minute.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
thank you for
but
having me.
welcome. Yeah, so glad you could. So Haleigh and I know each other because we are fellow authors together in the JOA collective, the Joan of Arc Publishing
Yep.
collective.
Fellow JOAs.
That's right. And your husband was on the first season of Writer's Island with me. We were both in the same season. And tomorrow we'll just jump in. Why not?
Just jump right in.
Yes. Yes. Haleigh heads out, and you're going to be part of season
Yep.
2.
I am. I'm going to be part of season 2. I leave for Miami tomorrow, and then we leave for the island on Monday.
Yes.
So I'm very, very excited. Still kind of packing. Like I'm mostly there. But there's always those last minute things. You're like, oh my gosh, I got to make sure that this gets stuffed in, and you run around the house kind of like a chicken with your head cut off.
Well, I debated whether or not to have you before or after you get back from the island because inevitably you will come back a very different Haleigh.
Yes, that's what I have heard. Nick was very, um, when he went to the island and he came back, it was just such an experience for him that he can't say enough good things about it. And I think it surprised him how much it moved him and how much of a spiritual experience it was for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know
So I'm
exactly what
excited to
to
have the
expect.
same.
Yeah. I found that as well. Well, let's dive into the Haleigh now. And we'll start
Yeah.
by offering a bit of an intro to our listeners. Can you share with us a little bit about you, your background, your faith, family of origin, your work, and whatnot? The things that really kind of contributed to making who you are today.
Yeah. I grew up here in Utah, in a little suburb of Salt Lake City called named Riverton. Pretty small. When I went to school out there, it was growing, but not at the rate it is now. It's boomed so much. When I grew up, there was still a lot of farmland, still a lot of kind of more rural
Mhm.
aspects to it. But I grew up in Utah, which is predominantly LDS, but I did not grow up LDS.
Okay.
And so that presented its own differences and challenges to maybe somebody who has been part of a church and left, or
Yeah,
who grew up in the church and is still in it. So that was an interesting dynamic.
for
There
sure.
were definitely some times where I felt set apart because of it.
Mhm.
Um, and I grew up and I was always a performer, always out doing things, singing, acting, um, you kind of name it. When I was 18, I had just turned 19. I had gone through my first semester of college,
Mhm.
and then I moved to LA for 3 years, and I went to an acting conservatory out in LA, and moved home after I spent a year out there after I had graduated, and it was just the culmination of like just a lot of financial things that were going on. Like it was the writer strike that happened, and then on top of it, the 2008 kind of market crash and uh, housing crash, and so it was not financially feasible to stay out there at that time. It just didn't make sense. So I moved back home, um, and now fast forward, I don't know, that was 20 almost years ago.
Mhm.
Uh, Fast forward now, I'm married to my amazing husband, Nick, who you were just talking about. I have 2 stepkids and my 2 doggies, and I'm the lead singer in a rock band.
I love that. Tell us the name of your rock band. I know it, but tell our listeners.
It's Blood Moon Majesty. We just had a show last night, so that's why I'm a little raspy, but it was a lot of fun. We had a blast. Thursday night shows are a little bit different. It's definitely a crowd, a more like I don't want to say like a more hardcore crowd, but they're definitely the people who want to come out and see a show on a weeknight. You know what I mean?
Mhm. They're dedicated.
Yep, absolutely.
That's so fun. And folks can follow you on Spotify.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yep. We've got music up on Spotify. Again, I'm the lead singer, and we kind of do it a little bit differently. The guys will come to me with an idea for a song, and they'll have it all fleshed out. And I will then go and write a melody and lyrics to what they've already written. And typically, when you write a song, you kind of do it kind of transversely. You would write the lyrics and the melody first, and then your band would play the music, to get the music to it. So we
okay,
kind of do it a little bit back.
I see. Awesome. Well, I look forward to our listeners getting introduced to you and your band. So let's rewind just a little bit. You said you grew up in Utah. Is your family from there? Like, have they been from there? Did they move there before you were born? I'm
Yeah,
curious what
my
your
mom
family
grew up. Yeah, my mom grew up in Utah. Long time family from there.
okay.
She grew up LDS. My dad is actually from Australia,
Okay.
and so he was born out there. His parents had immigrated right after World War II. His family had kind of immigrated from Holland afterwards. My great grandfather actually would hide Jews from the Gestapo in their attic. He was an artist, he was a painter, and so he had an area where he had all of his paintings, and there was a small, um,
Wow.
like, hidden closet behind all of it that he would hide people in and kind of, help them as they were moving through, uh, Holland, get them safe passage. So he was kind of like a railroad network, if you will, for
Wow.
that. So
Oh,
they
that's
moved
history.
to Adelaide, Australia, in like the gosh, I don't know what year it was, but they moved with their whole family to Australia, and my dad was born there, and then they immigrated from Australia to Utah in the mid to late 70s.
Okay. Wow, your roots are very diverse and very, very rich and deep. So you bring a very unique perspective to this podcast. As you know, it's called Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. It was something I started kind of accompanying my pivot in my faith journey. I did grow up in the LDS faith, sometimes called the Mormon, sometimes the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So you bring a perspective of somebody who didn't grow up particularly in Utah, um, not part of that mainstream faith. And you said there were times when you felt a part of, like, separated from that. I'd love to know a little bit more about that experience. I I'm wondering, I find myself wondering, you know, some of the folks that I interview, they have found their faith journey has brought up questions and doubts for them as it relates to beliefs that they were taught from the time they were very, very young. And you bring kind of a flip side view, maybe some of your doubts or your questions were maybe more directed towards the this mainstream faith slash religion slash group of people, because there is a culture that goes along with that
Oh,
for
for sure.
sure.
And especially in Utah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you hear people talk about, maybe if they grew up LDS outside of Utah, that it's a very different situation than if you're in Utah and raised in it, because there's so many people who are around you who are LDS.
Mhm.
For me, and it's interesting because I was just talking with somebody about this a week or two ago about growing up in Utah and not being Mormon. The person I was talking to is a male. And for me, growing up, there was never anything that I could do that would ever be good enough to be accepted or considered someone who would be worthy to uh, to marry if I didn't get baptized, or if I wasn't going to be going down that path. And I would hear, like, I would still go on dates with people, but it was always this weird expectation that there was going to be like something was going to happen more sexually towards the end of the date, and that was just not me at all. So
That's
we
so
would we
interesting.
would be yeah,
It was unspoken, but it
we would
felt implied?
ab- yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
Just because there was an assumption that because I was an LDS, that I had loose morals, which was
my goodness.
couldn't be further from the truth. But you would hear people, and most of the boys, yeah, would would be talking about how they'd have their fake IDs and they were going to the strip club with their friends and all of these things, but then they were going to church the next day. And I was like, I'm so confused right now.
Wow.
Um, so it always felt for me that I there was always an assumption that I was somehow the bad girl, or that I was loose morals or loose character or something like that. With my brother and even my dad, they were considered more of a project. We had a lot of people who I who maybe I played soccer with, or my dad was a soccer coach. He coached my team and he coached my brother's team. And so people would bring him and my brother Books of Mormon as a route to, oh, you're such a good person. You have to be Mormon so we can save you. Whereas on the flip side, I never got into like that. Not that I was needing that or wanting that or anything. It was just an interesting observation of how different the two
Perception.
assumptions about,
Uh-huh.
yeah, the perceptions were. Yeah. And I'm seeing that a little bit now as I'm helping Nick with his two kids, who are almost 14 and 18. The older daughter, who's 18, and his son's 14, and just how they are navigating a culture that they stand apart from.
You're seeing some of maybe what you experienced. You're seeing that they might be
Hmm.
also navigating similar themes or situations. I'm glad that they have
Yeah,
you
and
help them.
it mirrors very much. Thank you. I think it's been a good perspective um, for them, for me to have when they're going through this, because I think otherwise both uh Nick was very LDS growing up, and so I I know that in the back of his mind he probably knew that those sorts of judgments and things occurred, but when it's not directly affecting you, you don't think about it.
Yeah. It sounds like, going back to your growing up years, kind of your early young adulthood, you were given a behind the scenes look some of the boys you said that you would go on dates with shared with you things that maybe they wouldn't have shared with others that were female your age at the time because they were members and they because of these assumptions they made about you, they did share certain things. So you got a really interesting behind the scenes look there.
Yeah, definitely a
So
different perspective than I think the majority of my peers probably got on the flip side.
got the reverse. So I'm curious, Haley, then you mentioned your mother was raised LDS. You were not raised LDS. So I'd love to know then how spirituality or faith or beliefs in that area came into play for you. Maybe it wasn't until later. I'd love to hear more about that story, if
Yeah, for
that
sure.
part of your
My
story.
my mom was raised LDS, so by the time, uh, really by the time that she and my dad started dating in high school, she had left. Um, and my dad was raised Dutch Catholic Reform
Okay.
in a pretty strict religious household. However, when both my brother and I have a brother who's 4 years younger than I am. Neither of us were ever raised in a way that we went to church consistently or um, had a religious or spiritual upbringing in any way. I think I can count on one or one hand the number of times that we would actually had gone to like a non-denominational Christian church or anything like that. So as I got older, Um, I very much believe that spirituality is a human driver,
Tell me
and that
more.
it is something that we search for in ways. And I think it differs for everyone. Someone's spirituality can be communing with nature and being on a hike or spending every Sunday with their family. But I think we find something that speaks to us that brings and then it also brings a community together in a way. Um, and I kind of that would be, I would say, the one downside maybe to not being raised in any kind of religious upbringing is that you don't have the structure or the fundamentals to create a spiritual practice. Um, because I know a lot of people who are like going to the island, for instance, they will sit and meditate or they will pray or they'll connect with whatever their higher power that they connect with on a daily basis, and it's kind of it's a non-negotiable. And because I never had that, it's been very hard, and I'm still not great at great at it, trying to work that in to my life and find that.
Mhm. Wow, such a fantastic point that you make there, Haley, that
Yeah,
I hadn't thought of.
thank you.
I mean, some folks that grow up with quite a black and white system in place about what spirituality is and what it is not, and what's the right way to observe it
Hmm.
versus a wrong way, which I don't believe that exists, by the way. Um, but I'm just saying some folks would be grateful that they didn't have that instilled in them, from a young age. So I really appreciate you sharing that perspective. Like you come from a space of, I wasn't given really much of anything, and I am
Hmm.
trying to create what feels like a meaningful connection, practice, observance of what God, the creator, source, the divine, means for me in my life and how I experience that in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's been interesting because I don't necessarily have the religious trauma that some people do that
Mhm.
have grown up in
Sure,
any
sure.
particular religion may. And so I think that has actually been that part has been really good as far as my relationship with Nick, because I don't think there is there aren't the triggers that we both have on the same things, and we can hear one another and
Mhm,
listen
mhm.
and offer feedback in different ways that maybe the other person may not
Sure.
have realized or seen.
Mm. Sounds like it kinda balances, itself out. You balance one another out in that area, which is very beautiful. Um, yeah, I appreciate knowing that, and you sharing that unique perspective. So I'm curious to know then, what your journey to that connection with your inner knowing, with your inner, voice, source, what that has looked like, and most likely, if you're like the rest of us, you're still on that journey.
For sure. It I think started getting really loud for me towards the end of my first marriage. When I was living in LA, I was seeing um, someone. We were doing long distance, and when I moved back, we started seeing each other more frequently and more regularly. We had almost a 13-year relationship. We were only married for 3 years, but towards the end of my marriage, I just felt a pull to find something more. And for me, what it looked like, I think one of my very biggest moments of knowing was when I was reading Rebecca Campbell's first book, uh, Light is the New Black. And that opened up an idea of spirituality for me that wasn't necessarily bound by any particular type of religion, and it talked more about finding a source of inspiration in this and a higher power that felt more connective.
Mhm,
It wasn't waiting to be saved by anyone. It wasn't your religion telling you what's right from wrong. You were still in control of your autonomy and what you decided to do with your
mhm,
life.
mhm,
But it gave me some inspiration, I think, to go and find something that was bigger outside of myself.
mhm.
Um, and then it's kind of funny. You start to dip your toe in, and then maybe something will happen where you're like, oh, I gotta like this is people will think I'm weird. People will think I'm too out there. I gotta like close that off and not show those parts
So
of like
interesting.
the woo woo, even if they're like the parts that slightly attract someone to you in the beginning. If you get too weird, and they're like, oh, whoa, hold the phone. So after my divorce, I had started to date someone, and I think that was in large part something that initially was an attraction to me, but then soon was like, oh, but don't get too weird, don't get too woo woo, don't get too in your
You felt that
in
coming,
your
this individual.
yeah.
Okay.
Then I kind of put a lid back on it, and I don't know, maybe in the last probably in the last 3 years since Nick and I have dated, the woo has come spilling forth. Even Rockwell, our Nick's son, we were pretty early on in dating. Oh wait, no, we had gotten married actually, because he had said to one of his friends, he goes, "Yeah, my mom's a witch." His friend was like, "What?" Like, yeah, she's a witch. There's crystals all over my house. And he's like, and I was like, that could be interpreted so differently if you didn't
Mhm.
know what she was actually talking about. What did you call your mom? Um, I would, I would say that's in line with, you know, what I enjoy the description because it does incorporate the idea of someone who is just outside of the norm of what they are trying to find for themselves.
Mhm. Definitely self-guided, self-directed. But your reaction to what your stepson shared, I mean, the unfortunate truth is that that title or, that word, "witch," has had various meanings over the years, usually not cast in a positive light. I mean, I was one that used to look at that word or what that meant in a different light than I do now. Um, and I'm grateful that I don't cast the judgment that I used to. It really came from a place of not understanding, of gross ignorance, really, and probably fear of ideas that had been passed down through the years. When I say years, I'm talking, centuries, not just my parents or grandparents, right? I'm talking there's a history there that only tells
For sure.
one side. Yeah. So,
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that obviously has been passed down through, uh, like the connotation of the word that's been passed down through,
yeah,
ancestral and historical lines.
yeah, yeah. And the more that
That's
I
a very good point. Yeah,
yeah, and so I'm grateful that you you're owning who you are. Whatever that whatever word you use to describe it, and you can go outside of what and you obviously do. You go outside of what has been handed to you to define yourself. I think
yeah,
that's what's at the heart of being a spiritual being, of being somebody who is trying to connect with that higher power, is trying to conduct themselves on a regular basis, just continually doing better, up leveling, reaching that next higher version of self. And so
yeah.
it's
That's a very good way.
I mean, so that's you're like, I bet there's even if they wouldn't say it out loud, there are folks that might be a little envious of this autonomy that you have and that you are acting in and able to be so expansive and grow because you have thrown out external definitions.
Thank you. I think I do think there's still obviously some stigma between. I mean, even if you weren't to know anything about my spiritual beliefs or
Mhm.
desires or any of those things, to look at me when I don't have my cardigan on. And I'm tatted. I've got like both arms are almost full sleeves, um, all over my legs. I think there was definitely, uh, there are still assumptions made based on appearance and without getting to know who I am first. And I do agree with you that I think in part of it there is some maybe desire or I don't know if I want to use envy as the word, but just a desire to have that autonomy and to feel free to express yourself however it is that you want to express yourself.
Was that
And
h
it's used in verbiage to say like, oh well, she's she's a little different than what we expect. That's always been my favorite. Oh well, she's just not what we expected. when people meet me. I'm like, yeah, I get that a lot.
So was it hard to come to that place that you were just describing of just unapologetically owning that part of yourself?
Um, I think with it came after a period of some difficult things happening to me. When I was 18, just before the summer before I moved to LA, I was in an abusive relationship.
Okay.
And one of
Sorry.
the things, oh, thank you. It's part of what I'm actually writing about in the book is this, and how it actually kind of spearheaded this self reclamation in a way. Because one of his big things, I had always loved tattoos, and when I had turned 18, I wanted to get a tattoo to commemorate a friend of mine that had passed away. And this um, boyfriend at the time, he was adamant that I was not going to do anything to mark or mar my body, that my body was his, to tell me what I could and couldn't do with it. And so that was one of the very first things that I went and did when that relationship finally ended, was to go with my mom, and I got a tattoo for this friend that had passed away. And that was kind of the first step of like, oh, this is me doing what I want to do for myself, with myself. And it's a very permanent uh, way of proclaiming that. But I found that it was something that made me feel very it made me feel very unique, because they were pieces of art that I chose for a very specific reason, for a very specific time in my life. And so it told my story in a way that I think was completely different than what I had ever been used to.
That's so cool. It's so liberating to step into that autonomy and to claim
Mhm.
that power that's always been there, but perhaps we just didn't claim it for whatever reason. We didn't see it. We didn't know how, or we listened to some of those external voices that said, "No, you can't do that. You belong to me." That's probably my most favorite part to focus on, especially as I've changed the title of my podcast to Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. As I would allow myself to really just embrace the uncertainty and embrace the unknown that comes inevitably when you feel like your world has been rocked. In my case, that's what happened. And I found that there was so much to be celebrated on the other side of that, on the other side of taking the reins, of owning my autonomy when it my spiritual um, faith, life, observances, and whatnot. So I'd love to know from you, like, what are some of those moments of joy and bliss that have come from you owning your journey, living in this space and from a place of purposeful intention, you choosing what you do, what you don't do, and how you observe or don't observe.
I think one of the biggest blessings, and one of the best things that has ever happened to me, is that when I finally stepped into myself fully, is when Nick and I finally got to a point where we were both it was both the, right place, right time finally for us to start dating. We
Mhm,
had met so we had met many years ago. A friend of mine had introduced us, like, wanted to introduce us. She works for Nick, and he had just moved back, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, there's this new plastic surgeon. He just moved back from Texas. He's amazing. He's funny. all of the things. And um, I was dating someone, he was kind of dating someone at the time. And we've both talked about the fact that if for whatever reason we had put the relationships that we were in to the side and started dating each other at that point, it just wouldn't work. Um, healthy matches healthy, and he has said multiple times, like, "Oh, I was not at the point of healthy that would have matched yours, and I would have just dragged you down." Um, and so fast forward 4 years when I'm finally single, he's finally single, and we start talking on Instagram. It just We were both at a point where we had worked on ourselves and found ourselves enough that we could entertain 6 8 months down the road actually having a relationship with one another.
Mhm.
Um, and I think you can do a lot of great work and have an amazing fulfilled spiritual practice with yourself, but I think once you've found someone who is on the same trajectory as you, it just spearheads your your healing and your growth exponentially to be on that same path and that same trajectory. And then you have someone who can hold you accountable when you maybe backslide a little bit, or you don't, you're not putting in the time and the effort that you want, or you're not seeing the things in yourself that you used to see. And they can hold that mirror up for you.
That is really beautiful, Haley. That resonates. What a gift to be in that space and be able to find one another and be able to share a journey that's so deeply meaningful to both of you. And um, wow, that's so cool. I love that for you both. So, one of the last questions I like to ask each of my guests comes from the title of my podcast. And that question is, what does living beyond the shadow of doubt mean to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I I really think that at the at the core of that is living your life in such a way that you don't hold on to the mindset of sitting in the things that have happened to you as a victim, but you are able to
Mhm.
find where they were able to give you a gift to transmute that pain into something bigger, into something that you could find yourself more deeply from. Um, I There have been numerous things in my life that I could probably sit in and just feel sorry for myself or blame somebody else for, or have a very victim mindset in. But it's definitely a choice. You have to choose to do the things to not sit in that, whether that's um, telling your story, or whether that's going to therapy and doing the work in that way. Um, I think living without a shadow of a doubt is dropping all of that victim identity
Mm,
and
mhm,
standing in your sovereignty of your life.
mm. I love that. That's a great description. It's really just shedding a lot of the baggage. I
Mhm.
love that. So, any last thoughts to leave with our listeners before the new version of Haley returns from the island in a little over a week?
I'm I'm very excited. There is a large part of me that's very nervous because we're going with a lot of people who have a very dedicated spiritual practice, like I said. And I'm just like, "Ooh, I don't know what I'm doing. We're just figuring it out as we go along." And I am hoping that there is something, you know, some sort of epiphany or lightning strike that's going to happen, but I'm also okay knowing too that it could be a very quiet change. And I think recognizing that the change in ourselves and the change in our lives we want to be these big momentous gifts from the heavens, and sometimes they are in the very quiet moments, and they you don't recognize them until you have been outside of it and you can reflect on it.
That's amazing. That's really that's beautiful.
I'm I'm so nervous.
I'm I'm so excited for you. It is truly a once in a lifetime opportunity and experience, and yeah, it forever changed me, and I'm forever grateful for it. I have such good memories. It was such a choice experience. So just lean into all of the jitters and just know that you're probably gonna say or do some things that you feel silly about or maybe embarrassed. Just
Yeah.
lean into that too. It happened to me too.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
embrace it all, the
Yes.
beautiful and
Thank
the
you. Thank
messy
you.
and the
That
uncomfortable
is that
and
is perfect.
the, the divine, the all of the things. So, well, just a few more quick questions. I'm looking for literally 1 to 2 word answers for our listeners to get to know you. Tell us your favorite book or a favorite book.
Right now, anything witchy.
Okay,
Anything
that's
witchy.
fair. Perfect,
Anything like I love, yeah. That's what I get into is the fantasy and the witchy stuff.
perfect. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm such an introvert.
Do you know what? I was sitting here thinking, I wonder what she is because she can get on stage and just belt it out in front of folks, but often, sometimes those are the most introverted people. And I'm like, she
I
might
am
just be smack in the
that's part
middle.
yeah.
That's so fascinating.
I can get out of my
Love that.
bubble. Um, but that's partly why I'm married to Nick. I like prop him up with his main character energy and I'm like, here he is. Let him tell his stories. Let's
There.
go. And
That's
I'll just
awesome.
sit here and listen.
That's awesome. Okay, tell us your favorite artist.
Um, 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 I just blanked. What kind of artist?
You can pick. You choose the genre.
Okay. We'll say musical artist. Florence and the Machine. Oh my,
Okay. And are you a night owl or a morning lark?
I'm like smack dab right in the middle of the day. That's my sweet spot.
Who's your celebrity crush? If you have
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, he's kind of mine right now too. Furthest place you've traveled?
Or the Bali.
That's a fun one. And then finally, do you do still or carbonated water, or are you a diet soda fan, or some other fun beverage?
Mm, whiskey.
That is a first, Haley. Most most of my guests just say I'm a water person, not you.
Yeah.
Oh, whiskey.
No,
That's
whiskey.
hilarious. Oh, you're great. Oh, I've loved having you. This has been so fun. If folks wanted to connect with you, find out more about your work and whatnot, what would be the easiest way for them to do that?
Yes. Band stuff. You can find us at Blood Moon Majesty on Instagram and Spotify. I've just started a new Instagram page for all of the Writers Island and the book stuff, and that is From Ash and Ember, all one word on Instagram. I don't do the TikTok.
Yeah,
I've
no,
got a page,
me either.
not
I don't
not
either.
my thing.
I can barely keep up with Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, totally. From Ash and Ember. Yes, I've seen that one. That's a great one. I'll make sure and leave all of that in the show notes and for
Perfect.
our guests to be able to access. Thank you again,
Perfect.
Haley. This has been just
No,
amazing, and all the
thank
best.
you.
You're going to
Oh, thank
rock
you.
it. Literally, you're going to rock
Woo!
it.
Rock and roll, right?
That's right. Okay.
Well, thank